everybody. How's it going? This is Ryan, Rigs of Death Metal. Today, my guest is Matt of Sentient Horror. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing awesome, dude. I first off have to apologize because it's been a long time fan as we've kind of chatted in messages. And yeah, I regret not having you or John on the show sooner.
Yeah,
But
I mean, better, better late than never, I guess.
exactly.
But yeah, it's my pleasure. I've been following, your Instagram page for a while,
Appreciate that.
so
Thank you.
likewise, yeah.
You guys were for those that maybe don't know or remember, Sentient Horror did a really sick guitar playthrough for Gear Gods around, was that like 2015 or 16?
Probably 2016 because that was for the first track of our first record, which was Abyssal Ways. That was on
Nice.
Ungodly Forms. That came out at the end of 2016. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah, almost 10 years ago.
Dang.
Crazy. Yeah.
Time flies. Uh, so you guys were probably one of the earlier, I guess, of what people have started like the second wave of old school death metal or whatever, whatever.
Mhm.
I kind of found you guys in like Outer Heaven and I don't know, like maybe Undeath, like all,
Mhm.
bunch of cool bands that are now
Sure.
like kind of the road dogs now. They're the
Yeah. Yeah.
established acts at the moment.
Mhm.
And you guys, I guess you guys and Gatecreeper were kind of the ones that were flying the flag for a little bit more of like the Swedish death metal kind of
Mhm.
influence as opposed to everyone rocking more like, I feel like a lot of the bands were really, really heavy into like incantation and the real
Sure.
cavernous,
Mhm.
you know, stuff where you guys were like, nah, Dismember and At the Gates are pretty sick and
Yeah.
that's had some cool shreddy stuff going on.
Mhm.
Um, little bit of Petrov, a little bit of LG
Mhm.
influence I hear in
Sure.
your
Yeah.
vocals for sure,
Mhm.
especially on the most recent record. That kind of distinctive kind of, I don't know. Like LG always had kind of his own unique voice, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's definitely one of my number one vocal influences. I would say like him and Jan Chris from Gorefest
Mm.
is another big one. I know like Gorefest is a band that I find like they don't get as much recognition as I think they deserve, honestly. They kind of like they have a similar sound to a lot of the like that 90s Swedish sound, but being Dutch, I guess
Yeah.
they kind of to me they kind of sit in between like the UK scene and the Swedish scene. Like I kind of hear
Sure.
like, you know, they're kind of like a mix of both. And I love the, Carcass is one of my um big influences and favorite death metal bands as well. So
Sure.
I feel like Gorefest sits right in the middle of
Yeah.
all my favorite kind of bands. So and of course Don Swanu as well is another big vocal influence.
I could see that. I just started that Scott Burns book,
Mm-hmm.
choosing was it choosing death metal?
Yep, yep.
And there's like a big forward at the beginning of it with Dan Swano. So
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty sick. But
Yeah,
I'm trying to think what's another Dutch band? Isn't Sinister Dutch?
they're Dutch.
Yeah.
Asphyx, and I love Asphyx too. And shit, I I should be a little bit more quick on my Dutch death metal bands, but I know that Orphis and Asphyx are like two big. Hail Bullets, of course.
Oh, okay. See,
Yeah.
I didn't know it was fixed and Hail Bullets were Dutch. I
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I'm kind of bad at is like where bands hail from. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'm so far off it's funny.
Oh, Pestilence. Duh, missed that. That's like the big
Ah,
one. Yeah.
see, that's an example. Like, I don't know why. There was for a while, I thought Pestilence was Brazilian for some reason.
Oh, really?
I don't know why. I don't know what put that in my head. And then I found out they were Dutch, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm an idiot. Yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
not a clue. Just one of those weird things I got mixed up. But
Yeah.
um, so let's kind of dive into gear first and foremost.
Sure. Yeah.
I know you've always been an Ibanez guy,
Yes.
and we even chatted a little bit about that.
Hmm.
And I have a soft spot for Ibanez as
Hmm.
well. Even had another guitar built for me, and I was just like, want to try to make it the neck as close to my old Ibanez as
Hmm.
possible.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
you nailed it right there, man. It's the necks.
yeah,
For me, that's I don't have particularly large hands, and so those real thin, flat wizard necks like just feel perfect for me. Um, I mean, there's other brands out there that have really good necks as well. Like I've definitely like played some like Jacksons and Charbels that I felt
oh yeah,
felt really comfortable too. But yeah, just the Ibanez, and then also I love the RG 550. Like that's my that and the 565. Those are my two. And actually, I've got my brand new 565 sitting in the box from Sweetwater. Got delivered this morning. Has a little sticker on it that says wait 24 hours. Because the
sure,
temperature and everything. But yeah, I was able to snag one of the Desert Sun Yellow ones,
okay,
and it's like super, apparently they're like super limited in the US. Like they didn't even bother to put them on the Ibanez US website. Like that's how limited they are.
oh wow,
So yeah. But yeah, as soon as I saw that go up, I like immediately went on to Sweetwater and pre-ordered it. I was like, have to. It's
oh
just
yeah,
so cool looking. Like just I love the obnoxious neon 80s Ibanez colors.
oh yeah.
Yeah, they're my favorite.
The That's why I love the 550s. I love the Road Flare Red
Yep.
550s so
Hmm.
so freaking much.
Hmm.
I wanted that purple one that you had for sale for a minute too, but I just
Yeah.
didn't have it. But does the I'm bad with the numbers. 565, your new one,
Hmm. Hmm.
does it have the block heel like the 550, or is it more of a contoured
It's a block. Yeah. It's
block?
like it because it's part of the Genesis reissues.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've never got to play a 565. I've
Hmm.
played a 550 or two, and I don't know. The block didn't bother me too bad because I learned how to first play on a Strat,
Hmm.
so the block heel I had to kind of learn to work around it anyway.
Sure.
Um,
Well, the Ibanez ones are kind of like they're kind of like slanted. So then it's not like a big like solid block the way that like a Fender is. It's kind of like they kind of contoured a little bit.
yeah,
So I think ESP does some. It's very similar to what ESP does, actually. Yeah, because I played ESPs before, and yeah, they do something similar where um, it's kind of like at like a diagonal
sure.
to the body. Yeah, and the plate's like on that diagonal, so doesn't quite like get into your palm the way that a Strat heel does.
Gotcha. Was it? I think it was like the old school, like the original run of those guitars probably was a little bit more of like a straight up block, wasn't it?
Not
No.
positive. I think they were always like that. I think they were always kind of
Okay.
contoured. Yeah,
I
if
don't
my
know what.
memory serves me correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. I don't know why I was thinking that. Like either like the first run of gems or the first
Mhm.
550s maybe had a more in the way kind of block, but maybe not. Maybe
No.
somebody was just being picky and said that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Are you running in all your stuff? Is it all stock, or do you mod anything out?
I always mod pickup. Actually, I had Sweetwater just put put pickups right in.
Sick.
From them. Yeah. Um, so I've cycled through so many different pickup combinations, but I think I finally settled on one that I'm kind of like happy with right now, and those are the
Mhm.
Seymour Duncan Black Winners. Um,
Okay, those are
so,
sick.
so I have the Black Winners in all my guitars. With the 565, I have it paired with think they call it a hot rails or a hot something, hot strat
Hmm.
neck pickup. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, like a humbucking because it's a single coil in the neck for the 565s. And then I have the Black Winter set in one of my 550s, and the other one, my Road Flare Red 550 that I use pretty frequently with Sentient Horror is I don't actually have the Black Winter neck in there because I really don't use the neck pickup when I'm in B. It's a little too like soupy sounding for me.
Sure.
Like some I know some guys really pull it off. Like I know like Bill Steer does
Hmm.
a lot of his leads on his neck pickup, and it I mean he seems to make it sound pretty cool. But for me personally, like if I'm in B, like I'm on the bridge pickup the whole time.
Sure.
So yeah,
Yeah, it can get like way too rounded off and too bassy and muddy, like
yeah.
real easy.
Hmm.
I don't know if he compensates with like just a brighter voiced pickup, like a 59 or something, or
Well,
what.
he's got his signature pickup um, from Monty's. It's like a UK boutique pickup builder.
Sure.
Um, and I actually tried his signature bridge. I had that going for a while, and it did sound really cool. But it was one of those things like when you use like signature gear, there's always like that part of you that's less like I'm using someone else's pickup, something like that. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
it was one of those things where I it is a really really good pickup. But for I wanted to find one that I could settle on as my kind of like my own sort of thing. So that's like I said, I tried a bunch of different ones out and settled on the Black Winters for I think the thing I like about them too is that they sound good in standard and B.
Okay.
So they are definitely bright, but I kind of like that in a pickup, especially especially in the bridge. So I feel like because they work so well in both tunings, because I keep two guitars in standard and I keep two in B. So
Okay.
yeah, so basically like having that flexibility, for because I don't know if like for whatever reason, like if I'm just like oh shit, I want to string that particular one up in B for some reason, or I want to put it back into standard or something. So to have a pickup set that works in both tunings is pretty convenient.
Sure. And you're all six string now, right?
Yeah, yeah, and actually, it's funny how I arrived at that because initially, actually, in that video that you referenced that Abyssal Waves playthrough,
Hmm.
I was using a seven string,
Right.
and the first record in the EP were tracked with sevens. Um, but what had happened was I was in like a Sam Ash, and I actually went in. My wife plays violin, not like professional or anything, like just kind of like as a hobby. And so she was in there to like look for something for a violin. So I was just kind of like browsing around, and they had like a used RG Prestige on the wall that I was just like, oh, let me mess around on this. Just so happens whoever sold it to them put it in B, and they didn't bother to change strings or anything.
Hmm.
And I start playing it, and I'm like, this is the missing ingredient. It took me to actually play a six tune down to
Yeah.
to get that it's more than just the deep tuning, but it's the thicker strings down tuned,
Sure.
and just the way that the notes resonated, especially like the playing strings when you get like that vibrato, like it was like instantly reminded me of Carcass,
Hmm.
and I was just like, I gotta switch. Like I gotta start doing the B tuning with the six. It just felt and sounded like so much more like what I was going for.
Sure.
I think with the sevens, like yeah, it's convenient to have that high E string, but I feel like it does tighten everything up, and that is a particular sound. It's not necessarily a bad sound or anything, but you know, part of that like old school death metal approach is it's not supposed to be super tight.
Sure.
There's gotta be a little looseness there in the tone.
Right.
And yeah, and I just kind of that was my realization point. So after that, it was just like, well, let's, you know, get a six and, put that in standard. And yeah, I've been on sixes ever since. And I will say one other thing that's really convenient too with the sixes is like I can essentially get any guitar I want. With the sevens,
Oh yeah, true.
you're limited to just what's offered as a seven string.
Hmm.
So it's nice to have the options.
So for your Ibanez, what string gauge do you tend to go to for B standard?
I use the Diodario 12 through 60. That
Okay.
seems to be like it says like optimized for C on the package, but
Hmm.
I just B they I think they feel great in B. Um, I haven't tried like too many other brands. I just kind of like got that one and
Yeah,
it stuck. Yeah, kind of like if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort
sure.
of thing.
Which and you guys are B standard, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I thought so. Um, and if I'm not mistaken, I thought I've seen John hasn't doesn't he have like some multi-scale seven strings and
That yeah, again, that was that's what he had when we did that first record.
okay.
But he eventually switched to sixes. Like when I switched, he
Uh-huh.
switched.
Oh, okay.
Um, and he's not as like brand like as you mentioned, I'm like very squarely like an Ibanez guy just because just the necks um are really ideal for me. He's not as like adherent to one brand as I've been. So right now he's using an LTD. It's the it's one of the Horizons. I don't remember which one.
Right.
But it's got like a carved top and like a Les Paul style tailpiece.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, I don't
Yeah,
remember exactly what model it is, but it's
sure.
whatever one fits that description.
And do you know if his is a like longer scale length or anything like that?
No, it's just regular 25 and a half.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why. I just had it in my head that he was playing like some extended range or still on sevens or whatever, and was gonna ask like an intonation, any kind of
Mhm.
intonation
Well,
things
yeah,
ever.
actually, I remember it was we were tracking our second record, Morbid Realms, and that oh my god, like so like after that record, that was the one where I decided, okay, I'm blocking my bridges. You had started asking me about mods, so that is one mod I do on all my guitars. I
Okay.
install a stopper just to to so the guitars are all dive only.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't mind that. I don't use the bar a ton. I use it a little bit, but not. I don't really do like the huge like Kerry King, like
Yeah.
pull ups or dime bag pull ups on the bar or whatever. So I kind of just do like little like dives or whatever if I need to use that. But that was like the first thing because oh my god, just keeping the guitars in tune like with the floating bridge. I was okay. I'm not dealing with this anymore after that. So I put stoppers in all my guitars, and then the next thing was just investing in a really really good tuner. So I got some of the Peterson, the strobes, and those that's basically what we do is I mean John's on a hardtail anyway, but so I block my Floyds and make sure we have a good accurate tuner, and we really haven't had any problems since.
Okay. Killer. And that might serve as a good segue. What's your total pedal board actually look like?
Um, so the basic setup is and I swap pedals in and out like all the time. Like I'll find some that I particularly really like and I'll stick with them for a while. And it's like there's so many freaking pedals out there that you just see one you and like, oh, let me try this one out. But I have a front end loop and basically so I have like a rhythm side and a lead side. And so the
Mhm.
rhythm side has some type of HM2 style pedal on it. Right now, I've I've gone back to like the Wazacraft HM2.
Okay.
Um, but I mean, I have a ton of different HM2 pedals that I've swapped in and out. Um, my first one was that Behringer
Oh yeah.
MH300, which, by the way, anyone who if you want to experiment with that tone and you really don't want to invest in a very expensive pedal for it, that's a great starting point. It really does sound like the real thing. Whatever they definitely, base the circuit or whatever.
It's maybe even a hair grimier somehow. There's
Yeah,
something.
yeah, it does definitely have like it's got a little more like bite, maybe not as much of a pronounced mid range. I
A
think
little
like
more
that upper
brittle.
mid. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good description.
Which
Um,
could be a cool desired effect.
mm,
And more sizzly kind of.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing with a lot of these different pedals is that like they're all going to be like subtly different from one another,
Sure.
so you just kind of settle on, um, whichever ones are getting the job done, But I really like the Wazacraft one. Um, that's what's on, like I said, that's what's on my board right now. Um, on the lead side, I'm running a JHS phaser. It's the white one. So I that's something I kind of stole that idea from a buddy of mine, Brandon Ellis, who played with the Black Dahlia Murder. So I've known Brandon for years, and that's something that I know that he does, and I kind of stole that idea from him. It's definitely a really cool like it almost acts like that notched wah kind of thing, like
Yeah.
that like Michael Schenker lead kind of tone. When I'm a big Michael Schenker fan, but yeah, it just you said it real super subtle, and you don't have the mix up all the way. But it just adds that slight vocal quality that sounds really good on a lead sound.
Sure.
Um, and then I have that going into right now a Lone Wolf Audio Burning Spirit, which is a
Okay.
really really excellent overdrive. Very very gainy for an overdrive,
Mm-hmm.
because the way that I set my amp, I'm using a 6505 plus PV. The way that I set the gain on there, it's the red channel, but I don't really turn the gain up very high. Um, I have it at like 4 because I want to get more of the drive from the pedals.
Mm-hmm.
So having an overdrive that's a little more aggressive sounding sounds pretty cool. So that's what's on my board right now, and then I'm running a another Lone Wolf pedal is the Endless Blockade. It's a noise
Oh yeah.
gate, really really excellent noise gate.
Sure.
Um, and I use the 2 loops. So basically, it's like my guitar goes from the tuner to the first loop of the gate, then it splits into the front end loop, and then out of the front end loop, it goes back to the gate before it goes to the amp.
Hell yeah. So do you so you basically kind of keep it on the lead channel, gain down, HM2 for your rhythm tone, get more of the
Mm-hmm.
gain from there, and then you just do you switch that off and switch over to the burning spirit for your leads?
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's basically the way I kind of like strategically placed the channel switching on my board so I can grab it with just like one footprint.
Okay.
But I simultaneously hit the front end. It's a JHS switchback, I think it's called,
Hmm.
and like the foot switch that you can use for it, it's a remote foot switch. So you can literally put it
Okay.
anywhere. So I have it positioned right above the effects loop on off for the amp, because
Okay.
in the loop I'm running a TC, no, not TC Electronic, I'm sorry, a Tech 21 boost delay.
Okay.
So because it gives a little bit of like, it's got like a delay on there, like just to give like a little bit of space, and
Mhm.
then and then it's got a boost, and that's running in the effects loop. So um So I hit both on at the same time. So it gives the lead a little bit of a volume boost, and then you have the delay on there, so it just provides a little bit of extra space, in a live mix.
Gotcha. Hell yeah. And what kind of cabs are you running?
So we're not picky with cabs when we play out. We'll use anything. But at home I do have a Mesa cab. I've had it forever, like since I was a teenager.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I track at home, I actually run the head through a two notes torpedo captor X,
Sick.
which has been
They're
all of it.
great.
Yeah, fucking awesome. It's like the ability to run my rig through my computer monitors is amazing.
Oh yeah.
Not have to use any software amps or anything like that at home. It's great.
Yeah. I had one for a minute when I still had my old dual rectifier,
Mm,
but um went down a whole gear thing and sold it, bought other stuff, sold that, you know how it goes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um and now I've got like an Ingle, like one of the rack preamps,
Hmm.
and I can get just go direct with that. So I ended up getting rid of that captor.
Hmm.
Um Now I'm starting to regret it. I'm like, man, I'm gonna get another amp eventually. I should have just kept that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still end up, either the Ingle preamp or crap ton of different pedals. Uh, I love just like running them into my interface and then into some
Hmm.
kind of IR and just going full like mad scientist, which is
Yeah,
that is like the cool thing about digital that nobody I feel like a lot of people don't take advantage of is you can just come up with the weirdest combinations and running wild shit into other stuff.
totally.
And yeah.
Especially with all the IR
Oh,
hacks
sure.
and stuff. I have a couple of Bogren digital ones.
Hmm.
And it's funny that, like I mentioned, like we're not picky with cabs, but if there's one thing I've learned from like messing around with IRs, it's just like so much of your sound is the cab and the mic that
Oh, for
like,
sure.
yeah. But I mean, really, like, will we kind of just, our live rig is kind of our the way we kind of function is designed to be as what's the word I'm looking for, like we like to be able to kind of like take as little shit with us as possible, because
Sure.
of like van space and everything like that. So if we compare whatever we compare down, if venue has backline, we'll just use that. If it just means saving space in our travel.
Sure.
So
Yeah. It's funny how that it's been a theme for a couple interviews, uh, that, like kind of passing it on that you need to get on and off stage as fast as possible. It's just
yeah.
like,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
yeah,
That's the thing too. Even with our drummer Evan, he'll literally play on any shells. He doesn't care.
sure.
I mean, obviously, like we if we had, we do have like if we have to use, like I said, I have like a Mesa cabin. He's got his shells and stuff. But yeah, I mean, you know, we're not a picky band when it comes to that. Whatever
Yeah,
whatever helps set up and load out and load in, we'll do it.
for sure. I've um I've been trying to mess around with a pedal board only kind of rig.
Yeah.
Like still running a cab. I can't not
Mm,
have a cab.
mm,
I'll never do the in-ear thing.
yeah.
I've done it and I hate it.
Yeah.
But there's so many cool power amps that fit on your board now.
Totally. Yeah.
And so many like sick pedals, or I even have like one of the Kemper players, like the pedal
Hmm.
one. It's sitting in front of me right now.
Yeah.
So many cool options to just have everything direct on your board. And
Mm,
it's just I still have the angle rack for whenever I want that, but
sure. But angles are great too. I mean, they're as far as like all the amps that I've ever like tried and played through, they're up there for
Oh,
me.
for
I,
sure.
I think my favorite, like my dream amp would be an EVH. Like some of those new EVH amps are so good sounding.
Oh yeah.
Um,
The two there's two iterations that I like. All the EVH stuff is my favorite 5150 tone.
yeah.
And they're so versatile, like
hmm
every iteration. I love the two stealth versions
hmm
of the like the all blacked out one is sick, but then
Yeah.
like the EL34 stealth is really cool too. It just kind of
hmm
adds a little bit of that kind of Marshall kind of thing.
hmm
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. I think the 6L6 Stealth is the one I tried.
Those are great.
Yeah.
Um, I I played that dual rec for like a decade. That was my main. Most of the gigs I ever played were with that amp.
hmm
Um, Second would have been like a 50-watt Marshall, but like,
hmm
what a difference. But yeah, so like that dual rectifier kind of thing and 5150 thing are obviously like the two most familiar sounds to my ear.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, that's stealth. It just kind of inches the 5150 sound a little bit closer to the dual rec sound.
hmm
And so I was like, yeah, this is like the sweet spot.
Yeah. I think like you kind of hit the nail on the head that for the last, I mean, shit, like over 20 years, I think those have been sort of the staple,
Oh yeah,
amp heads for metal. Either dual rack or 65 or 5150 6505.
right.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of an interesting thing too. Like I think the 5150 sound has
Mm-hmm.
definitely inched out and become the most popular and very well used, we'll
Mm-hmm.
say,
Yeah.
tone. But man, it feels like more and more, and kind of like what I was just talking about. I'm part of the problem,
hmm
but like compact rigs and digital rigs have I feel like become like back in the day. It was like all you saw were either PV amps or if they had a little bit of money, a Mesa.
Right.
Now it's just like, where are their amps?
Yeah.
It's like, are they behind the cabs? Where are they?
Yeah.
And it's like,
I mean, some of that stuff is getting to the point where it really is sounding good. Like I have to admit, I I like. I mean, I definitely there was a point when I was getting a little bit more into digital,
mm-hmm.
you know, um, but I really kind of like the hands-on-ness of
Sure.
pedals and like
Yeah, we're tactile creatures by nature. Like
yeah,
it's kind of ingrained into us at this point.
yeah, totally,
Um, and I feel like it almost has to be said though. At the end of the day, the gear thing, it's for us. Like it's
yeah,
not for the audience. It's not for our
totally,
like
yeah,
fans or audience or whatever. Like,
mm,
like it's very self-serving. Or
mm,
maybe like
totally,
one or two other guitar players in the audience be like, "Guy-
yeah,
guy's tone sounds pretty sick tonight."
yeah. Well, I
Like,
mean, at the end of the day, like, one thing I like to remind myself is that like all the classic sounds, especially for death metal. I mean, it's not expensive gear.
no.
I mean the HM2 sound. I mean, that pedal was a dirt cheap pedal back
Mhm.
in the day. You're playing it through like a. I actually have a PV Studio Pro 40. I think that was the amp I saw a picture of from Sunlight Studios. I
Okay.
don't I don't use it, um, but I have it,
Hmm.
and it's just kind of sitting there. It's almost just like I wanted it almost as a collector's thing,
Yeah.
because like I know that like that's the amp that's on Left Hand Path
Sure.
kind of thing. Um, but yeah, like none of these guys were using expensive gear. It's all cheap shit.
Right.
So it's more like how you're using it rather than what you're using. I think in a lot of cases.
Absolutely. Um, One of my favorite examples. would probably be like Jack Owen.
Mm.
We'll get back onto Sentient Horror in a second. I'm
Sure, sure, yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah.
It's like
No, it's
we're,
dude, it's all. I love talking gear, and so this is
sure.
all fun. Yeah. Mm,
But yeah, like Jack Owen has been one of my favorites for a long time.
mm,
Him and Rob Barrett have written like not even just Cannibal Corpse, like just in death metal with every band they've been in. Just they just write bangers, both of
yeah.
them. And yeah, Jack, even now, like he's always been so frugal and so like humble with his gear. Like I think he talks now like even his writing setup he uses like
Mm.
Easy Drummer or something.
Oh yeah, he's that. Yeah.
And I love Easy Drummer.
Mm.
I'm still on two. Like I haven't even upgraded.
Same. I think I'm on two as well.
Yeah, it ain't broke.
Yep.
But yeah, and he doesn't even really I think he uses that and like runs it into like I don't know, like an 8 track or 4 track even,
Oh yeah.
which it's something kind of backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And there's videos like he's always using like kind of cheap floor modelers that he picks up from Guitar Center's used section.
Mm-hmm.
He'll just run them into the loop of whatever. like
Sure. Yeah.
like just just whatever works, whatever sounds good to him because uh you know, who was it? I think I had Curran Murphy on here last, and he was talking about like with Nevermore and Jam with Annihilator. He was using the Line 6 flex tone heads,
Mm.
and they even got like Jeff Waters from Annihilator in on it, and like playing with Nevermore and stuff,
Yeah.
and those amps were great.
Yeah.
It was the pod,
Yeah.
and you run into whatever good cabinet that you wanted, and those things were
Mm.
great.
Yeah. I had a pod back in the day. The little kidney bean looking thing.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I was talking to somebody that ran one of his. He had the kidney bean and he ran it
Mm.
through the loop of a PV triple X
Mm.
and just mad compliments on his tone.
Yeah.
But
Well,
uh okay, back to Sentient Horror.
sure.
Obviously with the HM2, everything's
Mm.
dimed, right? No, I'm just
Actually, I at least for how I said it,
Mhm.
I don't dime the drive.
Do you use it kind of like an overdrive?
So the secret of the HM2 is the EQ section. I
Right.
think that's something that like a lot of people who just kind of see like, oh, like you just turn everything up to 10 and that's so it's the color blend knobs. And
Sure.
specifically it's the high. So as long as that's all the way up, you're getting the sound.
Hell yeah.
So every all the other knobs, like I kind of tweak, to like I dial the low out a little bit just to like cut some of the low end, and then I dial the drive just kind of to taste, because if it's up too far, you're getting into that territory of like I can't make heads or tails of what notes I'm even playing anymore,
Yeah.
and that's a cool sound too. I mean, that's like the dismember sound. But I tend to prefer to hear a little bit more clarity in our riffs. So I don't run the gain up. I run it up enough to where you can still hear, definition, and
Sure.
I don't turn it up past that. So I don't remember off the top without pulling my board out. I don't remember where I have it set right now,
Oh
but it's it's
yeah,
def- it's definitely not all the way up.
that's one of those things. And I've had people ask me why I don't ask our guitar players for like their specific settings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things like, well, unless you're planning on replicating every single piece of their signal chain, I don't think it matters. But
Yeah,
that's going to be like use your ear kind of thing.
totally.
But
Yeah.
yeah, all my favorite HM2 tones have been like what you're talking about, where it's you're using the EQ as
Mm-hmm.
you know, like you mentioned. And then the gain is just kind of finding the proper gain staging, like the balance between the pedal versus your amp
Sure.
to get the, some note, at
Mm-hmm.
least
Yeah.
some note definition to come through. Yeah.
Sure. And
And
John, I was gonna say John is using right now the left hand RAF Deluxe.
Sick.
That's what he's got on his board. And the thing that's cool about the that pedal is the blend knob, because
Oh yeah.
when we track, we do quad tracking, and it's a set of HM2 and it's a set of just like regular, you know, without the HM2, let's just say. Um, so and again, that's in there to get that clarity in the riff. So basically it's like, and that's also something, I mean, Entomb did that. I don't know if Dismember ran it like that. We're talking like the OG bands. I know Entomb though, they have the left hand path sound is HM2 hard pan left and right, and then up the center is a DS1.
Okay.
And if you listen closely to left hand path, you can hear where the DS1 is coming
Yeah.
from. That's how you're hearing the riff, is from
Interesting.
that. Yep. And
Hmm.
if you took that out of the mix, you wouldn't get as much clarity in the riffing.
Okay.
So that's the Entombed formula. So basically, like we're taking that approach, but instead of like running it up the center and doing like a triple track, we're doing the quad, and you know it's two sets, you know, left and right.
Okay. Sick. Uh, I've experimented with kind of blending dry rhythm tracks
Mm-hmm.
with like
Right.
one HM2 type tone, like down the
Mm-hmm.
middle, like kind of
Yeah.
the inverse a little
Right.
bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's really sick. I love blending those sounds together.
Totally.
Um, Aborted did a really
Mm-hmm.
good job on kind of blending in chainsaw grind just
Mm-hmm.
underneath, or the last Bloodbath album.
Yeah.
That was kind of a hodgepodge of
Mm-hmm.
different pedal tones getting ran through different effect loops and
Yeah.
uh, uh God, yeah. Sorry,
This way.
recording nerd
Yeah.
crap
Yeah.
that I get into.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I need a left hand wrath. Joe's a buddy of mine.
Mm-hmm.
We've you know been in correspondence since like 2015, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and I've owned, I don't know, like a half dozen of his different pedals. I think I've got the Vigilante and the Void, which is like a
Mm-hmm.
multi effect one.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably another one I can't remember right now. um, yeah, as far as, I almost feel like a jerk that I don't have the left hand rack because
Yeah.
that was his flagship forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I've got I got it for a pedal demo forever ago, and it's just so good. I haven't messed with anything else, and it's
Mm-hmm.
the Medusa
Mm-hmm.
from Lichtlerm Audio.
Oh yeah. 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 I've seen them.
Yeah, and that thing's great too. It's just another take on a that same cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if the deluxe had a gate built in like this one does. It's just like a real simple one knob gate. Um,
Yeah. No, the deluxe does not have a gate built in.
okay.
Yeah. Just the
Um,
blend.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, the Medusa's sick. It's got a blend knob. It's got a side chain. So,
Okay.
and like I've ran a kind of a gnarly like fuzz pedal into the
Mm-hmm.
side chain of it and kind of blended between the Medusa and the fuzz.
Mm-hmm.
Just got a real wild kind of definite like wall of sound kind of
Mm-hmm.
gain. Like not getting any kind of articulation out of that, but it sounds huge.
Yeah.
But yeah, love messing with blending with tones.
Mm-hmm.
Pedals, it's another easy way to go down tone rabbit holes.
Totally.
Um, let's go into, well, first off, let me see if there's any other gear
Mm-hmm.
gear related questions. I think I think we covered the gamut of the gear side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's
Well,
talk, huh?
I'll tell you one cool pedal that I'm messing around with now that I never thought I would like mess around with it, but it was so our last record in Service of the Dead was mixed by Noah Buchanan, who's, you know, if you're familiar with him at all. I know he plays in Nunslaughter.
Oh,
Um
okay.
yeah, so we're on Redefining Darkness Records, and Tommy from Redefining Darkness and him are pretty good friends. They're from like the same area. Um, he we we were hanging out at when we played there in Ohio, in Cleveland, when we did our tour for In Service, and we were kind of like hanging out. He's just like, you know what you should try is like you should try a Klon, like a Klon style, like obviously not. I mean, if
Right,
I
right.
wanted to, if I wanted to like sell my car, I could get like an actual Klon. But he was just like, give it a shot. He's like, it's got this really cool like articulation and attack. And I was like, all right, so I got I got the JHS Nauticlon, just like $100. You like,
Sure.
solderless kit, you built it yourself. And I've been really digging that. I haven't done like a proper shootout with the Burning Spirit, as
Hmm.
for on the lead end side,
Yeah.
but man, just like playing at home again, I never thought, because it's such like a pedal that it's so like associated with like the
Blues lawyers.
yeah, totally, yeah. Like I was gonna say the doctors and lawyers crowd, but no, it does sound really cool. Like for my purposes, putting it in a lead loop, and
Hmm.
not obviously it's not going to do any kind of grimy you
Sure.
know gain, but yeah. So that's something that I haven't actually used it live yet or anything like that, but it's been a lot of fun to mess around with that pedal at home.
Hell yeah.
So
I that's funny because I just got my first Klon style pedal this year.
mm,
I mean, I've tried some in stores and shit like that.
mm,
Um, like the J Rocket Archer. I tried that
mm,
one a while back
yeah,
through like a Bad Cat, and it was like
mm,
kind of a clean to mid gain type thing. And I was like, yeah, it
sure,
sounds really sick. It's not
mm,
metal, but it's
yeah,
sick.
yeah.
Um,
Well, with the lead channel, like I'm more going for like really clear and articulate,
yeah.
rather than that's why I switch off of the HM2 when I do my leads,
Oh, sure.
because yeah, the HM2 really is not good for
No,
that.
it's very,
um
very harsh.
yeah, so I don't need like a super gainy um or like really like metal focused pedal on my lead channel. Just I
Sure.
need something that's gonna like give good sustain, and you know my test is I do the Van Halen horse whinny. If I can get that harmonic and I get that wow,
Yeah.
I know I've got the gain that I need.
Hell yeah.
So
I I've been loving compressors
mm.
for lead stuff
Oh,
for
cool.
a while.
Hmm.
Um, I've got one, and I've this is the bad thing about making friends with pedal builders because I'm like
Hmm.
all the time looking at what everyone's building. I'm like,
Yeah.
uh, but I've got one. It's just like a single knob. It's an Ouroboros
Hmm.
compressor from Black Hawk Amps,
Okay.
and it kind of it makes you think of like how an amp naturally compresses when you really
Hmm.
dime it.
Okay.
It feels like it simulates that. Um, again, for like just one giant knob, and
Mhm.
like it's cool for that, like kick on
Sure.
solos, and just makes everything pop pretty easy.
Yeah.
Uh, one of these days, I want to get like something with a little bit more, like a little bit more feature set,
Hmm.
like a VCA compressor kind of thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, the as far as like clones go, uh, been messing with a Thorpe Effects Peacekeeper that I got in
Hmm.
a trade.
Hmm.
Love it. And just trying to kind of find like the best pairing or how to dial it in because it's like
Hmm.
it's very bright, like that
Hmm.
articulation and everything. It's definitely like
Yeah.
the upper mid to high end.
Hmm.
So just kind of trying to find like the sweet spot with it. But I really like it. It's super sick.
Cool. Yeah.
Um, but redirecting back onto you. Let's talk
Sure.
about um, kind of where everything started for you as far as music. Like, what were your
Mm-hmm.
early inspirations? And, did you have any like private lessons or self taught, so on and so forth?
So my dad played keyboards and always had a recording studio room. Oh, I every memory I have growing up, whatever wherever we were living, he always had a room for that. He was a hobbyist, but he always had like a dedicated like studio space for his keyboards. And being a keyboard player, like his big thing was like all the progressive rock bands from the 70s.
Sure.
So that was what I kind of grew up around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to this day, like my all-time favorite band is Genesis, the
Awesome.
70s, Peter Gabriel fronted stuff.
Sure.
So that's kind of like what I was, I would just go and sift through my dad's band of vinyls, and listening to that, and early King Crimson was another big one, for me. But a lot of that stuff is, you're a kid trying to figure the guitar out, and it's not the most friendly music for that. So I eventually found, still in the progressive realm of things, Pink Floyd and Rush, and
Mm-hmm.
those were the two bands that I really latched onto as a young guitar player because they're much more guitar driven,
Mm-hmm.
and like the parts that I was hearing in there, like I could go out and buy a Rush tab book or a Pink Floyd tab book and like learn the songs.
Sure.
So I did have private lessons when I was a kid. Um, and they were really helpful for me like early on, like kind of like learning my fundamentals and stuff. When I got into metal, you know, um, there really wasn't anyone to teach that. And
Mm.
so I had to rely more on like instructional, books and videos and stuff like that. Um, and I eventually found my way to guitar players like and they're still amongst my favorite players like Yngwie Malmsteen and Marty Friedman, Jason Becker. Um, and it was because I got into that kind of guitar playing is actually how I got into death metal, because then I heard Necrophagist and I was just like, well, shit, this is
Yeah.
all this, neoclassical, harmonic minor and diminished arpeggio nonsense, but it's in a death metal context, right? So discovering Necrophagist, and then I kind of went down that rabbit hole and discovered bands adjacent to them like Obscura, and then learning, oh well, they were really into death, and then checking out, Carcass was another early one for me. Um, and again, just I could keep tracing like the band, like what got me to check what out,
Hmm.
but yeah, that was kind of like the inroads. And then what led me to the Swedish sound was trying to think the first time I heard that. It was definitely Dismember. I remember that, and I remember the song. It was Of Fire. It was the opening track on their album, on the album Death Metal. And I just remember thinking to myself, I'm like, what is this? Because I mean, like, yeah, the nickname Chainsaw Guitar Tone, it got that nickname for a reason. Like, it literally sounds like like a chainsaw
Right.
with notes. So so that's what led to that. And I had been playing, with like I said, my kind of journey to death metal was, I like very very often, like the way I kind of described it is sort of like the other way around. I think a lot of guys get started with the really extreme stuff and they discover the more melodic stuff later on. I was the opposite. Like I started with stuff that was more melodic and got it got
Yeah.
filthier, um, but I think that like that having come from that background gives me, I felt that that gave me like a little bit of a different perspective going into writing stuff that was heavier because, um, like it was very, like it took me a while to wrap my head around like the death metal riff salad approach to songwriting,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
because that is very like you don't have that approach in like traditional metal or thrash
No.
metal or anything like that. Um, but I think like figuring out how to like analyze it from the perspective of someone who came from more of that background, like traditional thrash and speed metal and stuff like that, definitely like helped me to like figure things out faster. I think
Sure.
because like again, just like trying to even learn those riffs. I mean, there's no easy way to figure that stuff out. But I powered through, getting stuff by ear. The My advice to anyone who wants to learn like that, like any type of real down tune riffing is pitch it up to standard tuning and figure it out in standard. The vocals sound hilarious, um, but uh, but it helps to clear up some of especially on the earlier recordings that might not have the clearest production value.
Yeah.
So that was a big help, was figuring that, oh, if I pitch these albums up, I can hear the riffs better. And so I would figure them out in standard and then play and then transfer it you know to B.
It's gonna be really difficult to not envision like an Alvin and the Chipmunks death metal
I
record
mean,
now.
that's pretty much what it sounds like when you do that. Yeah. Mhm.
I want to hear a slam, like a brutal death, like slam
Mhm.
band with pitched up
Yeah.
every God. Just takes like all the air
Yeah.
immediately out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So who would you say, obviously, like, you have the background, and I'm sure a lot of those still hold true.
Mhm.
As you've kind of been on your music journey, we all have our original guitar heroes, and
Sure.
our favorites kind of becomes a rotating cast of
Mhm.
characters.
Right.
Who would you say has been a big influence on you, or very just very inspiring to you here lately?
Lately. Well, I mentioned him earlier in the interview, but Brandon Ellis from Black Dahlia,
Sure.
you know, and like I said, I've known the guy for a really long time. I actually got like literally got to kind of watch his career develop. Um, but yeah, I mean, like he's definitely, besides being a friend of mine, definitely like one of, in my opinion, the top players right out there right now. And like
Sure.
what I really appreciate about what he's doing is he's kind of flying the flag for good old fashioned, you know, shred metal
Hmm.
lead guitar playing, 80s style, shrapnel records style.
For sure.
Like, in a world where everyone else is going nuts over like, more of that sort of like math rock kind of guitar playing and
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
I mean, those are all the big guitar heroes.
Yeah.
Like it's so refreshing that there's still someone out there getting, with a lot of recognition that's you know, still doing it 80s style. I
For
love it.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a little, I'm trying to not to sound like a hater. It's like it is a little disheartening, like the current trend of
Mm,
guitar heroes, like where the focus is at.
yeah.
And somebody was talking to me earlier today even about some of the newer acts that are out there, and I'll listen to a song or two from most of them, and it's like, all right, I'm good.
Mm.
i've I think I've heard everything you have to offer at this point. Like,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I think it happens with like every generation that's going to happen.
Sure.
It's there's always going to be like someone who starts the trend, and they're probably actually doing something like really unique and interesting. But then you have the onslaught of imitators, and I
Sure.
think that those are the bands that I think for people who aren't like really into that the sound of whatever that trend is. I
Hmm.
think it's the imitators that probably turn them off further, because it's
Probably.
you know what I mean? Because it's like I mean even looking at styles you know that one might enjoy, I think like there's a reason why like the OG bands are always going to be your A-listers.
Sure.
It's because they were the first ones to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll take band like, you know, Meshuggah
Mm.
and like all the
The,
gent kids that
yeah.
came
Well,
over the
they're
years.
that great example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will even say they're, you know, you could almost make an argument that it was like Meshuggah, and then there was nobody really catching on to that boat for
Right.
years.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden everybody caught on at the same time, and you
Yeah.
had your periphery monuments,
Hmm.
whoever,
Hmm.
uh whatever you want to call that newfound love of Meshuggah, that
Yeah.
wave. I don't really listen to any of the. I listened to those bands when they first came out, and I
Hmm.
was at college and going for music, and so I was over analyzing the crap out of all of it, and it was kind of
Hmm.
fun in that
Yeah.
regard. But
Hmm.
it was waning.
Yeah.
Animals as leaders too.
Hmm.
I can appreciate it.
Hmm.
I respect it. It's just
Sure.
I'm not putting it on.
Right.
Except for there was one band that came out during that same time period, a band called Viljarda.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember them. Yeah.
yeah, I thought I don't know. I'll still every now and then I'll put them on.
Hmm.
They had like a little bit more of a heavier, kind of more death metal edge
Hmm.
mixed in
I remember that. Yeah,
compared to the others anyway. So maybe
for
that's
sure.
why.
Was that
Uh,
was that the band with the Thal guitar? Am I remembering the right band?
oh, Thal, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
That was them.
Yeah.
I never understood what that meant either.
Me neither. I just
Yeah.
remember that was a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I never got that. It almost felt like some kind of weird meme within
Hmm.
their fan base or something.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, whatever the case is.
Hmm.
Yeah, I dug that band and
Hmm.
uh Buster Odeholm, that
Hmm.
producer, he works with a bunch of that kind of like Humanity's Last Breath uh and works with Viljarda and another
Hmm.
band. Like all his productions all sound sick and they all
Hmm.
it's that, but it's like dark.
Hmm.
I don't know. He just has a real cool, dark, heavier way of doing that style of stuff.
Hmm.
That's about as much as I get into the genty
Sure.
modern kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, there's like a million copycats. So
Yeah.
yeah, just like affirming with what you were saying.
I mean, granted, like, look, I'm not gonna hate on anyone for not being super original. I mean, like, I definitely wouldn't say that Sentient Horror is doing anything particularly groundbreaking. But I definitely think that, like, if you're talking about like being into a style or being able to get into a style, I think there's a reason the originators or the stay at the top of the food chain, you know, because they're just tapping into something you know that everyone else winds up chasing. But
Sure.
I definitely think that like to me the end goal isn't to originate. To me the end goal is just to write catchy songs, and like because I feel like that I feel that for me personally, where my creativity is in like working within a working within a particular genre, but trying to make the best of that I can. That's kind
Sure.
of how I see my role, as a songwriter within the genre. So, but yeah, so definitely not hating on bands that
No,
aren't
no hate.
that aren't innovators. Um,
I listen to bands that are 100% derivative of
yeah,
other bands. So it's not even like a principle matter or anything like that. Like there are bands I am well aware that I love and I put on, and I am well aware that they sound
sure,
exactly like other bands, and I
yeah,
love them for it.
for sure.
Um, because it's like, well, they sound like this band I love, but that band
Mhm.
only has two albums.
Yeah,
So,
no, you're
and
dude, you're dead right. I mean, that's such a common to me. I think with that sentiment of like, I always like ask myself like, am I a fan of that band, or do I just really like their first two records? You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
I feel like if I'm going to say I'm a fan of a certain band, I probably like should probably like most of their output.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
right.
Because there's tons of bands. I mean, look, I'll, I would say like a good example of a band, like not in death metal, but a good example of a band that I enjoy like a few records, but wouldn't consider myself a fan would be Dream Theater. And they were a band, I mentioned like back, when I got into stuff like from the progressive end, like they were an earlier band I discovered that through being into like Rush,
Hmm.
and the good old days of America Online, forums, found the name Dream Theater. But and I know that in certain circles that name's a dirty word, but man, their first three records, this got some cool. If you're into progressive music, I don't see how you could listen to the first three Dream Theater records and not think they're great. But like, I haven't been into anything since those
Right.
that they put out. So, but now it's just like those three records are like what percentage of their catalog? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So am
Right.
I am I a fan of? Can I actually say I'm a Dream Theater fan, or do I just happen to like their first three records? So
It
I just say I like their first two records.
it it is an interesting phenomenon when that happens, and it makes you get a little introspective,
Yeah.
kind of like what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll give you an example. A band I love is the
Mm-hmm.
band Hate.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I know them. Yeah.
adore that band.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me is like, I wonder if I like them so much and cling on to them so much because Behemoth doesn't sound like that anymore. And I love
Mm-hmm.
Behemoth's early stuff.
Yeah. No.
Like,
Totally. That I think that's another really valid point. Is we do get attached to the sound of certain bands as classic
sure,
era, and it's like you want to hear more of that, but you can only listen to like the same two records over and over
sure,
again and know it front and back. I'll do that with. I think that's when like you're really kind of like trying to milk the band that you really like the most is when you start listening to their not so good records and you're just like, it's just like, well, I've listened to the really good ones so much that just like I'm just putting the ones that aren't as good on just so it feels like I have something new to listen to by them.
sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
um, so kind of with that, I mean, you kind of partially answered this already.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and sentient horror, and I don't think this is a derogatory thing. You guys,
Mm-hmm.
wear your influences on your sleeves,
Yeah.
as I think almost any band really does if you
Mm-hmm.
actually are listening, you
Yeah.
know. Um so out of and you guys, get lumped in with like second wave of old school death metal. I
Mm-hmm.
said at the beginning of the interview even.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
uh so with that, I feel like can almost come with a slightly negative connotation,
Mm,
which I think is unjust,
mm,
um, and a little unfair.
yeah.
But so in your mind, if at all,
Mm,
what would you say would really differentiate you guys? Like what do you think you're really bringing to the table that is like we're not just ripping off band A or B. Like
mm.
it's an original mix because of this, and this.
So I think the one thing that if I had to describe what we do in a way that separates us from like the obvious comparisons we draw are to bands like Entombed and Dismember. And as you said, like I have no problem wearing my influences on my sleeve. You know, it's
Sure.
just like, you know, why not? I'm proud of what inspired me, you know, and I'm not afraid to show it, you know.
Sure.
But, you know, I think like and and I feel like the more we've gone on, this has kind of been brought out a little bit more. But kind of adding a little bit more of I don't want to say it's not tech, right? It's not like I mentioned necrophagus earlier. It's not like that, but it's like, you know, really like refined playing in a way
Sure.
that like it's almost like the opposite of like the caveman approach,
Right.
right? Which again, I love a lot of bands that do that. Um, but having that sort of um like having real players,
Hmm.
you know, make the music, um, and having, you know, the presence of the lead guitar work. I think that's the stuff that I really pull from an influence like Carcass because they, you know, once you hit like Heartwork, like that's what really attracted me to them is that it's like they had all the guitar stuff in there, like
Right.
the leads and the harmonies and the melodies and stuff like that. And I don't think anyone would call that like technical, but it's definitely like a higher degree of musicianship
Absolutely.
than from a more cavernous or caveman style, which I
It's
find well, I was going to say, which I find a lot of the more current bands that took on the HM2 sound and
mm-hmm.
that sort of Swedish approach are a little stompier. You know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
a little more of that. It's a little more of that. You know, as I said, like you know, I can't hear the notes so well. You know, kind of
Mm-hmm.
approach. Shanna, I love. I'm not complaining about that, but I think that's how I would define sentient horror is sort of like it's the meeting ground between that like really raw chainsaw tone and
Mm-hmm.
that you know and those Swedish influences with a band like a Carcass that has more of that like there's like players in there,
Sure.
you know what I mean? um and you know besides the guitar, I mean also drum wise, you know, our drummer Evan is a monster,
Right.
and he's doing stuff sometimes that like I'll send him a demo, and when I actually hear what he comes up with, like he follows like the groove pretty much like from what's on the demos, but he'll throw in like all these like little details. Like he plays very musically, and I really
Mm-hmm.
like drummers that do that. Um, so I would say that that's kind of where we're coming from, and then also to applying it to the more kind of traditional metal or thrash metal style song structures where you really do have those like verses and choruses and you
Right.
got that hook, and I'm always trying to come up with that vocal hook, you
Yeah.
know. um and so I think that's what really, if you were to ask me what do I think sets Sentient Horror apart from a lot of the other bands doing our sound, I think it's that. um and we really leaned into that on the most recent record, In Service of the Dead. It was just like, okay, like no riff salad on this record. It's all going to be like traditional style song structure. So I felt that like, and I thought about like what some of our more popular tunes were, from the older records, and they happened to be the ones that I wrote like that weren't like the riff salad. So which is funny to think about, because as I mentioned with my background, like I'm way more comfortable operating in that sort of verse chorus kind of. I had to get used to doing the riff salad thing. So now it's kind of like I've almost come full circle, like back to just, no, I'm going to do like the death metal thing, but I'm going to do it in that like traditional song structure kind of approach.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of not to oversimplify, but
Mhm.
puts me in mind of Iron Maiden versus Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
if you really boil down all these bands to like their absolute most core
Hmm.
influence, one or the other.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Or Priest. I'll throw Priest out. I'm a Priest guy. I'm a huge Priest guy. Yeah.
I do love some Priest.
Hmm.
um, yeah, no, I love that it encapsulates everything that sentient horror is,
Hmm.
and I think I was actually chatting with Joe not too long ago, kind of about
Hmm.
this, but kind of because he's such a funny guy, as
Hmm.
far as like like very very particular
Hmm.
about his tunes.
Yeah.
So I was like trying to figure out like the fuck you even into, man?
Yeah.
like, like
Yeah.
and and yeah, I liked kind of the way he was explaining it. Is it kind of a lot of the bands that he listens to, and more I thought about it, a lot of what I listen to is the same
Hmm.
thing, where it stems from, at least at the foundation,
Hmm.
that traditional heavy metal
Yeah.
kind of, and then bands like Dismember,
Hmm.
Angel Corpse,
Hmm.
a lot of these guys, I think Carcass
Yeah.
even,
Hmm.
um, really, 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 really show that. And
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's
Hmm.
great. And I love the structure of it. It's melodic without, getting like real borderline hard rock kind of stuff like
Yeah.
Catatonia
You
or
know, you know what? That to me, you hit the nail on the head. Is that I like writing, and this would also be something that I would use to describe sentient horror.
Mhm.
Is that we definitely have a melodic streak, but would never call us melodic death metal. And I think that's a big distinction. And there's a lot of
Sure.
bands that do that, and they
Yeah.
do it really, really well. Um, you know, and yeah, I think that would be another thing that I think I would throw out there, is like, having that side of melodicism without falling into the,
Yeah.
you know, mellow death, quote unquote, kind of
Sure.
trappings. Yeah.
and I, there was a Michael Amott interview
Mm-hmm.
a long time ago in like Guitar World magazine that I read, and
Mm-hmm.
he was which Arch Enemy was like a big gateway metal band for me.
Sure. Same. Yeah. In that same time frame that I was discovering. Yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael, like whether it's his work with, like Black Earth, but
Mm-hmm.
like whether it was his time with Carcass or Carnage
Mm-hmm.
or any of the, dude is all over Swedish death metal discography.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he was talking about a lot of bands doing the whole, at least at that time, early 2000s, the good cop,
Mm-hmm.
bad cop style vocals and
Sure.
stuff. And
Yeah.
he wasn't into that. So
Mm-hmm.
he likes the vocals to be very aggressive, and the melody and harmony, all that stuff comes more from the music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which, granted, the last several Arch Enemy albums weren't necessarily my cup of tea. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
cool they're still doing their thing. I kind of checked out after Doomsday Machine.
Yeah.
Um, that was a cool record, but
Mm-hmm.
and Black Earth is still my favorite. Um,
Oh yeah. Oh, the first like the
but
Johann Leva
yeah,
albums are fucking great.
Wages of Sin is still good.
Mhm. Yeah. That
Um,
was that's the first one with Angela, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
And I think I even got like a special like double disc version
hmm
that had stuff with Johan and then had Angela stuff.
Oh, cool.
And I still have that CD somewhere.
hmm
um, yeah, no, that's definitely some of my favorite stuff. Or maybe the death metal that's very heavy leaning into thrash metal.
hmm
Like a lot of Vader,
Sure.
or early Death and Possessed and
hmm
stuff like
Yeah.
that. Cancer,
Yeah.
just a sucker for the traditional style songwriting, I
Sure.
guess.
Well, you mentioned early death too. I think like and I think it goes without saying Chuck is a big inspiration for me, as doing guitar and vocals simultaneously and and kind of being the front person for the band and everything. Early death, that right there is a great example of kind of what I'm talking about. Is that, I mean, it's death metal, right? I mean, he kind of like wrote the blueprint for it, in my opinion. I know that that's a whole debate of who is the first death metal band kind of thing. I'm side death. I'm scream bloody gore side. Um, and my argument of that is that all of I don't think all of Seven Churches is a death metal record from start to finish. I think it has some death metal tracks,
Hmm.
but I think it's mostly a thrash record. And
Okay.
my argument for that is going to be, if you're going to say that, and I know this is controversial on like the death metal front, right? But if you're going to tell me Seven Churches is a death metal record from start to finish, then Pleasure to Kill should be considered that too. And I don't
Hmm.
think anyone calls that record a death. I think pretty much everyone calls that a thrash record.
Hmm. Okay.
So I say that's my argument for why I say Scream Bloody Gore is the first death metal record.
What about some of like the we're getting in the weeds here. What
Yeah,
about some
right.
of the early Morbid Angel EPs and stuff like that, like the demo days and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, like again, you're that's like I think like when that's like that's in that borderline,
Yeah.
right? I mean, Altars of Madness is very clearly a death metal record. I mean, it
Oh yeah.
definitely, that's but yeah, as far as like debut albums go,
Hmm.
I definitely say that Scream Bloody Gore is the first death metal record,
Okay.
in my humble opinion,
I had somebody
perhaps controversial opinion.
when we're getting into the
Mhm.
start of death metal, there's
Mhm.
no non-controversial
Yeah.
opinion. Everybody gets up in arms about that.
Mhm.
I've had somebody try to argue with me that Death wasn't even a death metal band; they were blackened thrash, and it's like
That's very interesting of a take.
I was like, and then I pair them up to like R Noir, and I'm like,
Mhm.
eh,
Yeah.
sure, bud. I don't whatever. I don't,
but getting back to
yeah,
what
yeah.
we were saying, I think that idea of like, I mean, I would argue that there's a lot of quote unquote melody on a record like Leprosy.
Oh yeah,
It's not, you know, Iron Maiden,
sure.
but you can hum the riff for Leprosy.
Hmm.
You can, it's definitely something that like there's a catchiness to it, right?
Yeah,
And again, that's what really gets me going. Like, is cat. I need it catchy. My favorite stuff is catchy stuff. Not to say that I don't enjoy stuff that's just super brutal or whatever, that puts that as the main focus. But my absolute favorite stuff has got to be catchy, and I think Death is like still the pinnacle of that for death metal, for
sure,
catchy death metal. I don't. It doesn't get much more catchy than a record like Leprosy.
sure. Uh, for me, I think like Behemoth's Demigod.
That's
When
got
it
a lot
comes
of,
when it
yeah.
comes to catchy,
Mm-hmm.
like Conquer All is just
Mm-hmm.
hooks.
Yeah,
Like, like
totally.
that was that and I think from Doomsday Machine.
Mm,
Um, oh, My Apocalypse, that
mm,
song.
yeah.
That riff is ridiculously catchy.
Hmm.
Like, I think those were some of the bands that really helped it click for me,
Hmm.
death metal.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, now, there's all kinds of stuff that's just straight up like noise that's
Yeah.
sick too. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, like anytime I'm playing, I kind of still have to have that traditional songwriting frame of reference
Hmm.
to navigate in and out of songs. I try on occasion to I think some really dissonant bands sound great.
Hmm.
Like Imperial Triumphant is one that off
Hmm.
the top of my head, or
Yeah.
Nightmare.
Hmm.
I can't write like that. I love
Hmm.
listening to it and it's
Hmm.
inspiring to me, makes me want to play. Best I could maybe best I could maybe do
Yeah.
is like some immolation-ish kind of riffs.
Sure.
I don't know. I just don't have it in me.
Hmm. That's kind of, it's funny you mentioned that. That's kind of how I feel about a lot of progressive stuff that I like listening to. I
Mm,
mentioned was brought up on that, um and because of that, I really love Opeth.
yeah.
Um like I don't consider really like, I know like they get slagged on a lot by like a lot of like real like death metal fans, but I don't think that's the point of Opeth. To me,
Yeah.
they're a progressive band. And I think
Sure.
if you like progressive music, I think Opeth is like top tier. Um, but it's always been really challenging for me to sit and write progressive music.
Oh
As much
yeah.
as I love listening to it, it's not it's not my good, like, when it's not the first thing I would think to sit down and try to write something that
Hmm.
sounds like that. Um, and I've tried in the past to do that, but yeah, the more sort of just straight ahead kind of metal approach, be it death metal or traditional metal or whatever, definitely like that's what comes out of me when I
Sure.
sit down to write. Like that's the natural thing that wants to come out, as opposed to like, some really like sprawling progressive type of stuff.
I wouldn't have the patience
Mm-hmm.
to be in a like
Yeah.
progressive band. Even if I could play it,
Mm-hmm.
it's a jazz musical vocabulary, jazz and rock musical
Mm-hmm.
vocabulary, and a classical song structure
Mm-hmm.
where it's more of an ebb and flow as opposed to a structured verse, chorus, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
It's more about movements and
Right.
almost like scoring something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the idea of having to memorize 12 riffs per song, even, that just sounds like way too much.
Yeah. I think that's one reason why I think like Rush is sort of like, that's the happy middle ground, right? Because
Yeah,
like because Rush figured out how to do it in like a radio friendly way. You know what I mean?
sure.
Like I don't like, yeah, like those tracks like Spirit of Radio or Tom Sawyer or whatever, like those are definitely progressive
Hmm.
tunes, but they're like 4 minutes long,
Right.
and they have that, that verse chorus kind of thing going and everything. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of the closest I could get to like coming up with anything that would be progressive, would be along the lines of that.
Yeah,
Less so like a Blackwater Park type of record where it's like every song is like 10 minutes long, and multi
sure.
movements, and yeah.
You get some cool bands like Yes as
Mm-hmm.
well, where
Mm-hmm.
they can write a straight up pop song,
Yes.
but then throw in just weird random, like, the hell was that kind of moments.
Yeah, well, that's Genesis too. I mean, I mentioned
Yeah, true.
they're like my favorite band, and but I think, like to kind of going back to the catchiness thing again, like Genesis is so fucking catchy, and it's just like, you know I think progressive music gets sort of a bad rap for being like, there's the side of it that's like very notey, you
Hmm.
know. Um, but what I love so much about about that early Genesis stuff is that, yeah, it's like it's long song structures and there is complicated stuff going on,
Hmm.
but like on the surface, I mean the harmony and the melody is so catchy, and it's almost like you don't even notice how complicated it is
Yeah.
until like you start to really pay attention and you're like, oh shit, that's like super super complicated music. um and to me, that's kind of like the closest you get to like classical music
Hmm.
in rock, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, like, a lot of those classical pieces are very complicated when you really look at it, but the most famous ones have some very distinct melodic character to it that just you don't have to be a music snob to appreciate it, you
Yeah.
know. But it's yeah, I feel like Opeth carries that the most out of more current progressive bands.
Hmm.
Because I don't when I listen to Opeth, like I don't really like the comp anything in there that's complicated. Is not what I'm paying attention to. But they've got some real interesting, especially on a record. I know I say current, and Blackwater Park came out in like 2001, so it's not. I guess that's not so current, but um, but yeah, that's what I hear in a record like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Using that as kind of a springboard,
Mm-hmm.
let's go into your Mount Rushmore
Mm-hmm.
of bands and
Mm-hmm.
or albums, whatever
Mm-hmm.
you can rattle off the top.
Sure. Um, are we talking just squarely in the death metal realm, or it was just like
I
any,
us I usually keep it death metal.
sure,
However, we've been so all over the place. If you
yeah,
want to do like your personal all time, like if you want to throw some Genesis on there, like more power to you.
sure. I'm gonna compartmentalize it just because it's easier for me to keep track.
Sure.
um, so if we're talking death metal, the very top of that mountain is Left Hand Path.
Okay. Hell yeah.
I will say that to me that is the perfect death metal record. Is Left Hand Path. Everything, I love everything about it. The songwriting is great. The production is I mean, groundbreaking, with
Hmm.
that tone and everything. So for me, like if we're talking like, the Mount Rushmore of death metal, that's number one. So I would go Left Hand Path. Um I would go Leprosy. Has got to be up there for me. Um I would go Like an Ever Flowing Stream by Dismember. Um, Again, very similar to Left Hand Path. I think for me personally, Left Hand Path edges it out. Just I think the songs overall are a little tighter
Okay.
in terms of like structure
Sure.
than on Like Never Flowing Stream. And I'm gonna go Necroticism.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big one for me. Um,
Nice.
Again, it's like there's just so many cool ideas on that record. Um, and I gotta go with I gotta put an Edge of Sanity record on there because they're big for me too. I'm probably gonna go for Edge of Sanity. I'm gonna go Crimson. I think that's kind of obvious, you
Sure.
know, but yeah, I mean, like, so to think when they did that record, it's so ahead of its time. Um, I mean, that's well before any of the bands that we talked about, like Opeth or whatever, like
Yeah.
doing anything progressive in the realms of, like, I say Crimson is legit a progressive death metal record. Like, it's got everything in there. Um, Shit, I don't know if I have to keep it to a certain limit, but like just off the top of my head, like Cause of Death
Oh, yeah.
is up there for me. Like just as a another example of like a fucking perfect death metal album.
Absolutely.
Um, I mean, the first day aside. Um, trying to think what else I
Deicide's
would
one of
put
my
up there.
jams for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
I never got like they were a band where I listened to the important records, but I never
Sure.
like kept kind of like kept up with them. But definitely the first day aside record is great.
Once Upon the
Mm-hmm.
Cross is probably
Mm-hmm.
my favorite. People, that's either people's favorite record or it's just not even in the conversation for some reason. I think it
Mm-hmm.
was like the fourth one, maybe, but
Think fourth or
I can't
fourth or
remember.
third.
Well,
Right, it's like it's self-titled Legion, and then
Serpents of the Light.
I thought that came after Once Upon the Cross.
I'm kind of getting the placement of those two.
Mixed.
Not
Yeah.
sure, but
Um,
Once Upon the Cross, though, regardless, is
mhm.
definitely my that's my all time favorite. I
Yeah.
like sometimes it goes back and forth with that and the self
Hmm.
titled,
Yeah.
but I don't know, just something about the songwriting on Once Upon the Cross, like another catchy death
Hmm.
metal record. Like
Oh yeah.
those songs get stuck in my head, and the production's is a little bit better than the first
Hmm.
record.
Yeah.
Glenn is actually at that point actually sounds like Glenn that we
Yeah.
have gotten to know.
Totally.
First record, I think he was still finding his or developing his voice a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So it's not as deep at that point yet. He's still kind of in that
Right.
more mid range. Um, shit. I think just like off the top of my head, I think those would be like my top tier death metal records, like
Solid list.
Desert Island death metal records. And there might be more, but like those would be like the first to come to mind. Last One on Earth by Asphyx is another one
Oh.
that's so fucking heavy. I remember the first time I heard that, like the Crusher and the title
Hmm.
track. Oh my god, it's so good.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, that those are I think that's my Mount Rushmore Desert Island death metal list. If I have to keep it to one record per band, because I think like I think if I could have multiple records by the same band, there'd be a lot more repeating of bands up there.
Sure.
Yeah. Um,
Two bands, five albums.
yeah. But if we're gonna open it up to like you know just like whatever,
Sure.
I mean, Selling England by the Pound by Genesis, that's like my number one record of all time.
Nice.
Yeah, that's yeah. Again, it's just from start to finish. Like so many great tunes on there. Um, I mean, like we're talking like trad metal, Masters of Reality.
Mm.
I love Old Sabbath. Maiden. I'm Maiden. I'm gonna have to go Number of the Beast. And it's kind of like obvious, but
I was gonna ask because
mm,
I'm more of a Killers guy.
yeah. I think like so. A buddy of mine said this recently, and this I think he summed up what I love so much about Number of the Beast
Hmm.
because it's the only Maiden record with Bruce and Clive Burr, and Clive Burr is the best Maiden drummer.
Mm.
I know, like Nico's great, and
Hmm.
like he's like the fan favorite, but Clive had that punk energy to his playing
Oh yeah.
that and his hand like so to me like I'd rather for aggressiveness a drummer with real fast hands
Yeah.
beats a drummer with fast feet for me.
Okay.
If you had to pick one or the other, you know what
Mm.
I mean?
Yeah.
There's something about that having that fast right hand like on the ride or the hat just kind of going.
Hmm.
It's that punk
Sure.
approach. And so Clive has that. And, Nico was a little bit more like technical.
Yeah.
But I think so it's like you've got that punky drumming approach from Killers, but it's got Bruce too.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
to me is the perfect middle ground.
I absolutely get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more punk kind of feel, or the punk slash trad heavy metal
Mm-hmm.
feel of Killers is what really did it for me. And
Mm-hmm.
then like Bruce's vocals gave it this epic kind of more venturing into power metal
Sure.
kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I dislike it. I
Mm-hmm.
just, I got my preference, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm totally into like early early speed power metal.
oh
I'll
yeah.
tell you one band that I love that not enough people know about is Rage. Not Rage Against the Machine,
Yeah.
but
No.
the German speed metal band Rage
Okay, I'll have
is
to go look him up.
check out if you want their classic speed metal record is Perfect Man.
Hmm.
My personal favorite is probably The Missing Link, and that's where they are getting a little bit more in that like
Yeah.
borderline like power metal-y kind of
Uh-huh.
approach, but they're trio and like definitely they're on the more speed metal and of like the heavier, like the like Walls of Jericho, Halloween,
Okay.
as opposed to like the Keepers, Michael Kiska stuff. Like,
Gotcha.
and that's what I really like is that real early like speed metal.
Sure.
Yeah, I love like the early Blind Guardian records too. I've been on like revisiting a lot of that
Those are
recently.
cool.
Yeah, it's just that old school like late '80s, early '90s like German speed metal. I fucking love that shit. Running Wild.
Hell yeah.
Um, yeah, that's like, and it's funny because like I hadn't listened to that kind of stuff for a long time, and fairly recently I started digging a lot of that stuff back out.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, that's because to me that's like it's it's sort of like the German answer to a band like Overkill, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
That's kind of, or Anthrax. That's kind of how I hear it. You know what I mean? It's got the
Sure.
melodic singing, but and of course it's got like the beer hall influence,
Oh yeah.
and I know some people probably find that influence cheesy, but I think it's fun,
Oh, I
So
love it.
yeah.
I've had a rotation going for like the past year
Mm-hmm.
where Razor
Mm-hmm.
or Accept, some Raven,
Mm-hmm.
all kind of ends up finding its way into,
Oh yeah, yeah.
into
Oh
heavy
dude,
rotation.
dude, if you're into Accept and Raven and stuff like that, I think you'll dig that early Rage
Hell yeah.
stuff. Yeah. Like I said, I think if you really want to go like more of like the pure speed metal stuff, like you're safe on like their first three records.
Safe on
Yeah.
them.
Past that, the vocal melodies do get a little bit more into that like Halloweenish,
Mm,
like
yeah.
kind of thing, but not to the point where it's like Bruce Dickinson. It's not like a Bruce Dickinson vocal. It's like
Right.
it's definitely it has that sort of rough around the edges, which I think is
That's my
works
jam.
real. That works real. It works really well. Yeah, the singer's PV Wagner is his name, and he's got that he's got that rough around the edges kind of vocal. It's high. He goes high, in on the earlier stuff, and then I think in the '90s he kind of like realized he probably couldn't do it quite like that anymore.
Sure.
So it's a little bit lower after that. But yeah, they're a cool sort of diamond in the rough kind of band.
Fuck yeah.
Especially if you're from the U. They never toured here, kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
But they're kind of like a like a Vakken band. They play like every other year sort of thing.
One of these days I gotta go.
Yeah,
Well, dude, this has been an absolute pleasure. This is a fun conversation.
for sure. Yeah.
I want to thank you for taking the time to come on here.
Mm-hmm.
Before we hop off, is there anything you want to plug? I know your all's last record came out last year.
Mm-hmm.
Anything in the works? Any upcoming tours? So on and
Yeah.
so forth.
So anyone listening, if you haven't checked us out yet, In Service of the Dead is our most recent record. Came out on Redefining Darkness at the end of last October. I'm definitely very proud of that record. So if you haven't checked us out before, I recommend starting there. I would say we've got actually this coming up weekend. We're doing a set of shows. We're playing at the Green Beacon Gallery that's outside of Pittsburgh this Friday the 18th, and Saturday the 19th. We're gonna support Inoculation at their album release show in Cleveland at No Class. Um, Past that, we're going to be appearing at the New England Death Metal Fun Time Bonanza. It's at the end of June up in May, up in Maine,
Great name.
and Mortician's the headliner.
Ah,
So that's I
what?
think that's some pretty good reason to come check the fest out. Um, but yeah, that's what we got. Kind of in the books right now. We're not a band that's kind of in the position to do a lot of heavy touring, and I think that's one thing that it's definitely isn't doing us any favors to not be able to do that. You know, but we try to get out, on these like little weekenders and stuff. So, if you follow us on our socials like Instagram and stuff, you can keep up with what we're doing. But I'm planning on starting to write the next record sometime this year. I don't
Hmm.
really I don't really like to take too much of a break. I wait maybe half a year or so from when a record comes out before I start thinking about what we're doing next. So
Hmm.
um, besides that, myself and our drummer Evan are both on the next record by the band Heads for the Dead. That's a project featuring Yoni Pedersen, he's like in a million bands. But listeners might know him from Wombbath, and I think he's in Massacre now.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah. Um, and Ralph Haber, who's the vocalist for the band Revel in Flesh. So it's a project that they've got going on for a while, and I've been involved in doing their like the lead guitar work on their. Basically, I did like one or two tracks on the first two records, but from the third record on, I'm kind of the primary lead guitar player for them. And it just so happened that they needed a drummer, so Evan lended his. So it's basically half of Sentient Horror is playing on this next Heads for the Dead record. I don't know when it's coming out, but I'm pretty stoked. It's good shit.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very oh man, how do I even describe Heads for the Dead? It's definitely very European death metal sounding. Um and it's got like the whole sort of theme of the band is like horror movie, like lyrics about different horror movies and stuff. So there's like a almost like a horror score vibe to the record. Like the types of themes and stuff that come in and out, and like the use of keyboards, and definitely has like a horror like a yeah horror movie soundtrack album kind of vibe. So
Nice.
that's supposed to come out sometime this year. I know they're on Pulverized Records, I believe.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, so definitely keep an eye out for that as well.
Hell yeah. Definitely appreciate the recommendations. I'm gonna have
Sure.
so much stuff to check out on YouTube
Yeah.
after we get off of here.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, thank you again. Everybody, go check out Sentient Horror. If you're assumedly watching this on YouTube, because I don't share it anywhere else, there will be links down below in the description. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Peace.